Inner Peace Press, bringing soul stories to life. Hello and welcome to Inner Peace Press's YouTube channel. I am delighted to have Amber Lohret here with us to discuss her book, Invisible: Finding Purpose and Spiritual Awakening After the Storm of Traumatic Brain Injury. Amber, welcome.
Hi.
Very glad that you're taking this time to answer a few questions about your book. It was a pleasure to come and see you a couple of weeks ago in upstate New York, to be there for the launch of your book, and to see all the support that you have in your community. It's a very cool thing. So I have just a few questions for you about your book, so we can get to know you a little bit more and know about your book a little bit more. So here we go. So you came to me, well, you were, before your brain injury, you were a psychiatric nurse. So most people who are psychiatric nurses aren't setting out to write a book necessarily, but after your experience, you were clearly drawn to write a book. Could you talk to us and tell us a little bit about how that happened, how you went from the injury to deciding to write a book?
Yeah, so I used writing as a form of therapy. Even when I was working as a psychiatric nurse, I wrote a lot. I love to journal and just kind of feel what I'm feeling on paper. So, but with this, a brain injury is something that is very invisible, and even providers have a hard time explaining it to the person. So the point of my book is number one, is therapeutic for me. It was really something that I was doing for myself to start. And then I realized that it's important for, the whole world kind of to see it, to understand it, raise awareness, and teach vulnerability. Because for the longest time, I didn't know how to be vulnerable. I didn't know how to express myself and what I was feeling. And I do think it's very important that people learn how to be vulnerable and allow themselves to feel their feelings. And I strongly believe vulnerability is a strength, not weakness. And I think it's important for people to better understand what a TBI survivor is going through.
Mm-hmm. So what is this vulnerability that you talk about? Is that just like telling something that you to strangers that you wouldn't normally tell somebody, or is it telling a particular thing?
Well, it's not even strangers. It's actually, to the people we love the most, or who are a part of our lives the most. We hold this stigma, even in our families, to be a certain way, act a certain way, and not allow ourselves to communicate or express what it is we're going through. And in the beginning with my brain injury, I continued the same way I was before brain injury. I was trying to work and take care of the whole household. And although I have my partner Andy who has helped, I never said to him, "Hey, I'm really struggling. Like I'm super tired and my brain is just not working." I just kept going, which caused a lot of relationship issues with him, with my children, with my parents, my siblings, because vulnerability is taught to us as being weak instead of being something that can actually help improve ourselves and our relationships. And then, of course, yes, with strangers, I think it's also important that, how do we meet new people? It's by being vulnerable. And how do we know if we resonate with a person? It's by being vulnerable. It's, not by being hard and not emotionless, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So being real, being your real self
Yeah.
in front of others, and not
Yes.
needing to worry about their expectations or managing their expectations of their experience or your experience of what's happening. Love that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So that also maybe segues into what was the biggest challenge for you in writing your book?
So, there's a lot of symptoms that come with a brain injury, and I had some increased emotional symptoms, increased physical symptoms. Um, before brain injury, again, I would go into something and do it very, um, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but it would be something I would do it and do it very quickly or fast and not take a lot of breaks. And with this, I had to allow myself patience and compassion and walk away from the book for days, not just a couple hours. And I had to also be with my feelings while writing the book because it brought up things that happened in the beginning that I thought I was healed from, but it kind of opened those wounds again. And I had to utilize what I've learned through therapy and with my holistic provider. And also, some of it I had to reach back out to providers and talk through it. So there was just a lot of challenges going into that vulnerability of talking about my journey with TBI.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then the physical, with the vision and headaches and all of that, I had to really allow myself breaks, which is not always an easy thing to do, especially when you have an idea inside of your head that you need to get out.
Mhm. So did you rely on your own journal entries and writings during the experience while you wrote the book, or was it
So,
all fresh?
no, a lot of it, almost all of it came from my journaling. The poems definitely in the book came from my journals. I write a lot of poems, and those were all from, the whatever I was feeling at the time when I wrote them. And pretty much everything came from my journaling. My memory isn't great, and so whatever I wrote had to really be on paper already, and or talked about with friends or family who experienced it with me.
Nice. So what's a takeaway that you would like for a reader to have from your book?
So, the takeaway is to really try to look at people through a lens of love and not so much through judging, whatever it is you're seeing. People, everybody is going through something. And I've learned that with my book when people have reached out to me after reading it or during reading it, that what I was feeling, they also have felt, even if the circumstance was completely different. And so I think it's very important that we show compassion towards each other and kindness, and that we really start to pay attention more to each other, because you just really never know who is struggling and who may need a friend. Even if it's just an acquaintance, you think it's important to check up on each other. And then, of course, to raise awareness. Again, I'm in TBI groups. I've talked to a lot of caregivers in these groups who are struggling. And so it's not just a TBI survivor. There's so many caregivers who don't know what to do or what to say or how to, you know, even approach their loved one, because they just don't know what it is they're thinking or going through. And so I think raising awareness and getting that awareness into the medical field, I think, is important too, because I do believe there's some lacking information that takes place at our providers' offices.
Mhm. It's a good point. And that's, especially with TBI, because there's just not enough information out there. And because TBI affects people in such diverse ways, it's not everybody going in this, not everybody has the same exact thing. Sure, there's a lot of memory, there's a lot of that identity is changing. You can't do certain things that you could do. So that also, changes with your conception of self. But because everybody's a little bit different, the doctors don't just say, okay, here's your list of things that you need to, watch for or think about. And also with the concussion being slightly different than a TBI, how does a doctor or somebody in the medical field support each individual on their very individual journey? That's really hard. So I love this idea to create awareness so that we are considering others and what they're going through, because it doesn't have to, that could be completely unrelated to a brain injury. It could be just personal issue they're going through. Maybe they lost a job and you don't know how they're feeling, or maybe they have that condition where you have pain all the time. Whatever it is that somebody's going through, to be able to love that idea, that the visual that you gave me, like put on your lens of understanding and love and non-judgment, and just be there to see that person and how you can be there for them in that moment.
Yeah, I think it's very important.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing with that. What would you say to a TBI survivor?
So I go back and think about what I would have loved somebody to say to me. And as a survivor, and I see this a lot in my groups that I'm in, you're not crazy and your symptoms are very real. And to really find a support group that you feel comfortable with, and that you feel supported by. I mean, it's called a support group, but really that you feel you're getting what you need out of it, because your family can help, and of course our loved ones, they do try, and I understand that now, but there's a lot of things they don't know, and that they just can't know because they're not the ones experiencing what it is a brain injury does to you. So I do think it's very important that when you have a brain injury or a concussion or anything, that you do reach out to support groups in your area, or everything's virtual now. So, it's very easy to find something that can help you. But also I think it's important that, see this a lot too, and this is something I had to work through. I had to accept who I am now with a brain injury. It was really hard in the beginning to let go of my old self, my old me, and to accept who I am, or who I was becoming. And with that, there was like a lot of anger that went along with that, because I was so upset about who I've lost, or not getting back who I was quick enough. I thought my old me would be back soon, and everything would go back to normal, and that's just not the case with a brain injury, whatever normal may be. But once I accepted who I am and who I am with a brain injury, I really woke up to my purpose, and allowed this awakening to take place, which has allowed a lot of positive to happen. And so, it's okay to miss the old you, and it's okay to grieve the old you. But once you start accepting who you're becoming, and who you possibly are meant to be, then things do start to flow a little easier.
That's beautifully said. Beautiful. That, it's that, let's get connected, and let's not be so attached to, these words aren't coming quite right, but we get so stuck, let's say, in our experience, and it becomes easier to stay there than to try and move out of where you are, right? It's like, why would somebody want to be depressed? Well, if that's, the feeling is known and they know what to expect with it, So it's easier than doing whatever that thing is that gets you out of it. But that, so it is, you must be vulnerable to go to a support group. Maybe not to go there a little bit, but to speak there, because that is how you will heal yourself, is through allowing it, right, to get out, which is, of course, a
Yeah.
large part of Inner Peace Press and having people write books, or, supporting people to write their story, because it's part of your healing process. But also, once you share with others, they gain generally from it as well. And
Yeah.
maybe they don't understand it at that moment, but there's, generally a reason why you're all together at that time, supporting one another.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. All right, I have one more question for you then.
Okay.
What's next?
So that's a hard one for me because I do enjoy at this time of my life living right in the present moment. And that's a piece of accepting who I am. And I think that's for anybody too, not only TBI survivors, but we're all growing into whoever we're supposed to be or whatever we're supposed to be. And so I think um, for me, you know, I don't live in the past anymore, and I certainly can't live in the future because nobody knows what will happen. But at the present moment, I definitely have more books that will be coming out, hopefully, with you, Heather. And I make soap, which, it's interesting because I started that as I like to be creative, I like working with my hands, and I like to challenge my brain. And so I started that just for fun and to use my creative mind. And then people have been really enjoying my soaps and find them to be really refreshing for their skin. It's all natural. And I'm teaching yoga, which I love. I love yoga. And for brain injury survivors, I believe yoga is super important. It teaches us to just be present in our bodies. And so that's been a lot of fun. So, I'm just kind of going with the flow of life and finding my purpose. And with that flow, I have found a lot of what my purpose is, and what more to come, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So no more nursing for you?
Well, at this time, so I was taken out of work. If in my book, I talk about that. And that was a grieving process.
Mm-hmm.
I love nursing. I don't know many people who will say that, but I do love to be a nurse, and I love helping other people, which I'm doing, just differently. It's just a different form of nursing, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the traditional way to be a nurse, but again, I was ruled unfavorable for disability at this time, which I talk about in my book. Um, and so I do believe things happen for a reason, and I do think that whatever that reason is, I'm still in the process of figuring out. Um, but I don't know what the future holds. I don't know. I know right now with my brain injury, I'm not allowed to be a nurse. It's just too much of a high risk, and so that's another thing I had to kind of learn to accept. And I had to go through the process of dealing with those emotions in order to accept it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I know you have a drive for educating others and how the body works as one thing. So I know that you will have some workshops coming up that will support people using your clinical background, but in this like kind of soft and yogic lens, which I think will be really helpful to people. Is bringing that past experience and the personal experience together to help people to understand who they are, not just if somebody has the TBI or not, because we can all benefit from the work that you've done on yourself through this whole process. So thank you for sharing your gifts with us and sharing your story through your book. Any last words you'd like to share, say?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, it's all summarized right here in Invisible, so you can grab your copy in the links below. And yeah, stay tuned for more to come from Amber. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
And everybody else, like and subscribe to get updated when new videos come out. Okay, bye.